Now on STV, it's time for us to join ITN in London for the latest national news at 10 o'clock.
70 die in a Brazilian pipeline explosion. A safe end to 3 days of bomb disposal work. Princess Anne says time is running out for the people of West Africa. And the first lorry drivers back from France tuck into the Great British Breakfast. Good evening. It's now known that 70 people died and 16 more were seriously injured in an oil pipeline explosion in Brazil. A shanty town on the outskirts of Cubatão, 40 miles southeast of Sao Paulo, was devastated by fire after the explosion. John Kiddie in London has the details.
Most people were asleep when the explosion happened. An oil pipeline, which had been leaking for several hours, suddenly burst into flames, quickly engulfing a quarter of the township. It spread so fast because the shacks were made of wood and cardboard, giving some people no chance of escape. As the fire brigade arrived, 300 homes had already been destroyed. But with help from volunteers, they managed to save 1,000 huts and as many inhabitants. The extent of the damage was revealed at dawn. Cubatão is built on a swamp, and as the burning oil spread, the huts which were perched on stilts had collapsed into the flames. Already declared one of the world's most polluted towns, the smoke from the fire simply added to poisonous fumes from chemical plants nearby. It was a tragedy which some could hardly comprehend. Many of the injured have severe burns to their whole bodies, and while an investigation's been promised, for some it's enough to know that none of their family are on the list of those still unaccounted for.
Here, the major civil service union says it's been promised support by Britain's 5 biggest unions for Tuesday's strike over the GCHQ spy centre. The CPSA says the walkout's been backed by the transport union, the engineering workers, the general and municipal workers, the public employees and the town hall union, NELGO. But the Environment Secretary, Mr. Patrick Jenkin, urged caution. He said most trade unionists would realise it's nothing whatever to do with them. Labour's leader, Mr. Kinnock, attacked the government's union ban, saying you cannot safeguard democracy by destroying liberty. And the Liberal leader, Mr. Steele, called Mrs. Thatcher's handling of the dispute appalling, but added there's no excuse for secondary strike action. The Army have finally defused a huge 1,000-pound bomb at Cookstown in County Tyrone. The bomb, packed in 6 plastic bins, was found in a culvert near a housing estate. Army experts took away the explosives before blowing up the trigger device. 600 people who've had to stay away from their nearby homes since Thursday weren't allowed back until security forces checked a second device that finally turned out to be a false alarm. Several thousand Ulster loyalists have marched through Belfast to protest at the government's decision to allow Londonderry City Council to change its name. It'll now be known as Derry City Council, the name traditionally used by Catholics but not Protestants. The city itself will still be known as Londonderry. British haulage companies are to sue the French government for compensation after the 8-day blockade by French lorry drivers. Some drivers have already received £160 in compensation, but many missed out because they were cut off.
Most of the drivers arriving back at Dover today have been trapped by the blockades for up to 9 days in the French Alps. It's caused severe financial hardship for those drivers who are self-employed and the smaller lorry companies, and many have yet to receive any form of compensation. Although morale has remained high during the ordeal, all are relieved to be back at last.
Oh, it's good to be back. It's been 3 weeks nearly now, and I'm looking forward to a nice warm bed tonight.
Well, you know, we were lucky we only got one truck caught up in the blockade, but I've heard some firms they've had over 50% of their trucks blocked up in the blockade, and
That's putting them to the wall, is it?
well, I should imagine some of the smaller firms, they've been in a very bad state.
Eventually, when I leave here, I'm going to go home and have a nice bath, but take the wife out for an hour tonight and go have a good night in bed. The truck's fine, I've got a nice cab, but it's nothing like my own bed.
A traditional English breakfast was waiting for the truck drivers on the dockside, care of a well-known company of sausage makers. After living on cold croissants and tins of French beans in sub-zero temperatures, they all had very healthy appetites. David Chater, ITN, in Dover.
In Belgium, 5 people died and 2 were severely burned at a Brussels cinema complex when they were trapped by fire as they ran the wrong way to escape the blaze. 500 people were rescued from the crowded building by firefighters who believe the blaze was started by smoking in the cinema foyer. Sport. Kevin Keegan gave Newcastle fans a reminder of what they'll be missing when he retires. And British tennis has had a good day too.
With Liverpool still on course for another title win, there was more interest in Division 2, where 5 clubs are competing for promotion. Newcastle played at home for the first time since Kevin Keegan announced his premature retirement. And in a 3-1 victory against Cardiff, the hero of Tyneside didn't disappoint his fans.
It's hardly a novelty for Kevin Keegan to be the centre of attention, but he's still as irrepressible as ever. It took him just 9 minutes to apply the deftest of touches to Beardsley's through ball and leave Chris Waddle to hammer home. Right on half-time, it was Keegan again, producing the accuracy to expose Cardiff keeper Andy Dibble. For a man facing retirement, Keegan showed a rare appetite for work. And when Beardsley made Dibble concede a penalty, it was another cue for Kevin. Goal number 21 of the season was never in doubt. The familiar celebration seems as genuine as ever. 2 minutes later, Keegan was back organising the defence. The advice was ignored, and Nigel Vaughan had the effrontery to make it 3-1. Another Newcastle victory, and with promotion the only leaving present he really wants, Kevin Keegan has no time to waste. Roger Thames, ITN Sport, St James's Park.
While Newcastle's win kept them in 4th place, Sheffield Wednesday regained the lead with 3 points against Brighton. Chelsea and Manchester City only managed goalless draws. Grimsby, meanwhile, continued to cause the rest a few headaches by extending their unbeaten run to 16. Today's victims were Crystal Palace, and in a drab game, Grimsby created one of the few chances through a breakaway. The Palace defence watched the ball for too long, and Tony Ford was left alone to finish it off. Back in Division 1, Liverpool and Manchester United both won, while Nottingham Forest had a surprising setback, losing at home to Arsenal by a single goal from Paul Mariner. Over to Rugby Union, and Bristol, the John Player Cup holders, are through to the quarter-finals after an emphatic and thoroughly deserved victory over London Welsh by 36 points to 8. The Bristol lock-forward Nigel Pumphrey scored the first of his 2 tries from a short penalty. Having established their supremacy, Bristol ran riot in the second half, scoring 5 tries. One of the best came from an interception by Morley. It was taken up by Nibbs, Barnes and Hogg, who sold an outrageous dummy to clear himself a path to the posts. It'll take a lot to stop Bristol on this form. In the Davis Cup, John Lloyd and Colin Dowdeswell, playing together for the first time, combined surprisingly well to beat the Italians Oclepo and Panatta in 5 sets, giving Britain a 2-1 lead in the first-round tie at Telford. After almost 3 hours' play, Panatta serves 3-5 down in the final set with the score at deuce. So it's match point to the British pair. Britain now only needs 1 more win from tomorrow's 2 singles to go through to the next round against the current holders, Australia. England's cricketers have ended their tour of New Zealand on a losing note. They lost the final one-day international by 7 wickets, although they won the series 2-1. Alan Lamb was England's only real bright spot. He made an unbeaten 97. Leading national hunt jockey John Frankham is a whisker away from history. He rode 2 winners at Kempton today to take his career total to 999. Only one man, Stan Meller, has ridden over 1,000 national hunt winners, and Frankham now seems certain to bring his own 1,000 up at Doncaster on Monday.
Princess Anne says time is running out for the people of drought-stricken West Africa. She ended her tour of the area in Upper Volta and warned the worst of the killer drought is still to come.
During her 5 days in Upper Volta, Princess Anne travelled to remote regions where the desert is slowly taking over, baking the roads into bone-shaking ruts. She met Save the Children workers who are bracing themselves for the worst of the drought. The wet season brings less rain each year in a region almost too isolated to help.
One of the problems is a shortage of time, because any assistance in terms of food has got a long way to come from limited ports of entry, bad roads, and it's got to be here before beginning of May, which is in theory when they expect the rains to start again. And here I think it's worse in the sense that the funds projects almost have to stand still. You don't feel you're getting anywhere, but even to stand still, you've got to run pretty hard just to keep people coming, and that they should feel that there is some point in still coming to the clinics and going to the village health workers.
You've travelled widely as president of Save the Children Fund. What personal emotion are you left with at the end of this trip?
Well, I think of the thing that always I get left with at the end of all my trips really is I'm always impressed by the fund workers. I mean, they're amazingly cheerful and determined lot with a huge amount of common sense and a very good sense of humour, which I suspect is vital to the work. And it strikes me that wherever they are, whatever they've been asked to do, they don't just get stuck in. They involve everybody. They get the locals with them. They're very much part of the community. And that's really what the fund aims at, is to involve the community so that it can carry on. It doesn't need the fund in the end.
Save the Children workers know they can't afford to get depressed and disheartened, though local life expectancy is only 40 now. As the graveyards fill up, the people pray for deliverance from the drought. But the royal visit boosted the morale of entire villages, who jumped at the chance for celebration. The high spirits left Princess Anne deeply impressed with the determination and fighting spirit of the people Save the Children is working for. Anne Lucas, ITN, Upper Volta.
Finally, some late news just in. 2 climbers missing in Snowdonia in bad weather have been found dead by rescue teams. They're still searching for a 3rd climber. And that's the news this Saturday evening. From all of us here, bye-bye.